Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Brewer, and welcome to episode 63 of the 11FS FinTech Insider Breakfast Show. In this show, we bring you the best and the brightest from around the fintech and banking landscape every single weekday, straight into your homes at 8:30 BST, live here on LinkedIn. Today, I am super thrilled to be joined by Simon Torrance. And Simon Torrance is a senior advisor and author. Some really, really interesting books in terms of the things that you've been writing about, Simon. Particularly, I mean, the last few, the New Growth Playbook and Fight Back. And on this morning's show, what we're going to be doing is talking about Simon's views, the new book, Fight Back, and really that power of a platform strategy, which actually so many industries have attempted and so many people in banking are really, really interested in. So, Simon, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm really well. Thank you very much, David. Great to be here with you today.
Well, fantastic to have you on. As always, guys who are watching this over on LinkedIn, we love getting your questions. So if you drop a question into the sidebar, we'll weave it into the conversation as we go. And if you've got any comments or anything you want Simon or myself to pick up, just let us know. All right, Simon, if we start with maybe a little bit of your background, because you've had a really interesting career, and actually, do you know what? I think it really sets the tone and actually sets the credibility for the things that you've been writing about. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I've been, for most of my career, I've been an innovation consultant, and latterly in the last sort of 20 years, I've been an advisor to boards and leadership teams on the question of fundamental business model transformation, the way fundamentally traditional incumbent companies create value for customers and capture values for themselves. And I've been focusing for the last 12 years now on platform business models, which, as you said, are probably the most powerful business models on the planet today, as everything is connected. So I spend my time working with companies across multiple sectors, and increasingly the financial sector. I'm actually finding it fascinating at the moment, because many people are talking about financial technology becoming the new technical platform for the whole digital economy. After the internet itself, mobile, cloud, people are saying, well, maybe it's financial technology next, which is going to be embedded in everything. And so I'm getting quite fascinated by that at the moment, and helping companies think through what's their role in as these developments emerge.
Well, it's interesting, and you say business model transformation is really gets to the heart of an industry that is evolving, doesn't it? I mean, there's so many times people will change so many different things. Digital is a veneer, or they'll change some. Branches start looking like Apple stores. Different changes that happen, but fundamentally, until you're changing the business model of your business, then people really hang on to that thing, don't they? Because arguably, it's the thing that they cling to that made them successful in the first place, I guess, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And I think there are two statistics that really have grabbed me recently, and I use them a lot to sort of try and get people to think about this. One is some surveys of 2,000 CEOs about 18 months ago, asking them about the impact of digitalization on their sectors. And 85% of them said that they were worried about the fundamental viability of their business models as their sector digitizes. And as you say, they're very successful creating businesses in the industrial area, shall we say. But digitalization changes everything. It actually depresses profit pools and traditional ways of creating value that companies have. And that worry is quite fundamental. Now, the other stat that I use a lot, and again sort of really woke me up, was that 80% of companies, the return on their digital investment was zero or negative, spending a lot of money just trying to digitize what they currently do.
Yeah.
But that's just to keep up with the competition and demands of customers or regulators and so on, but not making a material difference to the bottom line or the valuation of the company. And so those are the two, that fundamental worry, are we economically viable as everything digitizes? And secondly, we're spending a lot of money, but we're not getting much back for it.
Yeah.
And so that's the context for a lot of my work.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's great to see finally I guess inevitably people having to face into this because I mean, you've talked about this a lot before, but actually, the I in ROI, people are not getting it, are they? Exactly as you say, in terms of that setup, not getting the returns on the investment that they're making, not decommissioning old technology, not creating that benefit in terms of, really creating much more of efficient, from an economical perspective, an efficient utility that they can actually support. I mean, it is. I personally think, as much as any CEO of a big bank that's out there now, they're not worried really, and probably shouldn't be worried about Monzo's app or Starling's app or whatever. It's this point. It's the operational costs getting out of control, and from a unit economics perspective, your business model is becoming almost unsustainable in terms of that place. And that's a much harder problem to solve than can we build an iPhone app, isn't it? But it gets really to the core of the business and what the business really stands for. So, well, I mean, you're picking on quite a big problem to solve straight away with the books, which is fantastic. But it is the problem, I think. So
it is. But it is, and if you think about financial services, as you know, the return on equity, which is the key measure, has been sort of flat for all the banks, or most of the banks, for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Yet they have incredible assets. They've got wonderful assets, and you look at all the fintech startups, and they have to raise huge amount of capital to create some new business. But what I'm been saying to a lot of financial institutions, that you could do the same. Why couldn't you create these fintech businesses? You've got all the assets. You can do it for a fraction of the cost that it takes a startup to do. And there's nothing. Well, there's a couple of things stopping you, but you have the capability of creating your own portfolio of fintech businesses, which tend to have more effective business models, typically platform business models. Why can't you sort of get out of your own way to enable you to add much more value back to your customers and society in general, particularly at this time where, in the crisis, we need as much support as we can from the financial system to help us get through this. And we're sort of stuck in the old ways of doing things. And that's, the book Fight Back, you can tell what it's about there. It was originally conceived as fighting back against digital disruption, but really it's about fighting back against old ways of thinking and old ways of acting. That's really the most important thing at the moment.
And I think those themes, as you say, the themes of the book. So Fight Back. So great book for anybody who's watching this. I'd highly recommend going and grabbing a copy of it. But what many books I think lack is actually so what do I do? The practicalities of like, get it, this is the thing, now help me do something about it, or how do I sort of take it forward? So I mean, you've taken it that few steps further, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, there are three critical things to do at the moment. The first one is helping the leaders understand the new economics of digital, because they are particularly in banks, very successful, very intelligent people who've risen to the top of the greasy pole by operating an older business model, which is still pretty successful. It generates a lot of cash, et cetera, but it's flat. It's not a growth business at the moment, and as a result, it's not attracting the sort of talent that you would hope for powerful businesses that are looking to make a greater impact on the world. And so I say that the first thing is helping the leaders really understand the economics of digital businesses and digital business models. That's step one. And not just pay lip service to it. And probably you need to go not just at the C level, the C-1, which is the shareholders and investors, because they're the who you actually are pushing the leaders to do what they do and imposing the metrics that they are expecting to be delivered against. But that's one thing. So that level of understanding at the leadership or above the leadership level. The second is the fundamental organizational setup, and this is the most important, because you cannot do disruptive innovation from within the core business. It doesn't work. It's never worked, because the core business is set up to optimize the current business model, and everybody is focused on that. And trying to do anything disruptive there, the immune system, as you know, just tends to suck all the life out of it. So we have to create a new structure and a new space in which disruptive or breakthrough or radical innovation, however you like to call it, can flourish, but it can't be a sort of skunk works or an R&D division. It has to be something meaningful that is allowed to operate in a radically different way, work with different people, work with entrepreneurs like yourself and other people who in the past might have wanted to set up their own fintech, but could be attracted if they have some equity stake and the right incentives to work with a big incumbent.
Sure.
But make sure that we can, the new business activity is driving value back to the old business as well, and make sure there is a self-sustaining and self-supporting interaction between the two. So that's the second thing, the organizational setup. And we call, some people call it the ambidextrous organization, but proper investment in that.
Sure.
And then the third thing is the skills to scale up new businesses, because how many real innovations in the financial industry have we seen in terms of new businesses? Maybe Marcus? I mean, what other big ventures have been created by traditional banks? Not many. So we need new skills, and the skills don't reside within the bank. And most of the, as I said, the entrepreneurs who've got those skills don't want to work for a bank, but they could be enticed if we could create the right structures that would attract them. Yeah. And so the best example I have of people who've done the three things I've just mentioned is Ping An from China, which people probably a lot of people on this call today will know, because you're all innovators and advanced digital people. But many leaders still don't understand what Ping An did. But they addressed those 3 points, and now I think they're the most valuable insurance company in the world. They've overtaken HSBC in value, and much bigger than all their local peers as well. And they embedded a platform business model right at their core. They created new entities. They attracted A-grade entrepreneurs to work with them to drive them forward. And they created the right organizational environment in which that can happen. And look at how successful they are.
Well, and actually, like, as you say, there are good examples of people doing this. There are great examples of people being really successful doing this. Sadly, there are loads of examples of people doing this and getting it wrong as well, right? And I think, to your point, in terms of the the ingredients, the things that need to be such to make these things happen, I think particularly on that second one, and you said, that is like the hygiene factor, getting that operation, getting that working, getting it practically distanced from the mothership to allow it to the space to be created and create sustainability. I mean, personally, I've seen people have the aspiration many times for that second one, but not deliver on it. And actually, if you look at many examples out there, there's, I mean, Bo in the UK with RBS is an example of that. I think if you look at over in the US with, many of the big platforms, the big banks that have tried to create challenges. The issue is when a big bank tries to create a startup like a big bank, right? Yes. So the money that's invested, the people, the skills, and ultimately the scaredness, which is definitely not an English word, but the scaredness of the incumbent of the business model challenge. Mental, religious belief about how we as an organization make money or don't make money, unless that first principle is changed, then a lot of this is theater, isn't it? Like you say, into billions on this type of theater. But it's great to see people starting to get this right, and as you say, it's great to see these platforms starting to really flourish now as well. But so what's the response been to the book? Because this is obviously quite a it is a first principle conversation with these organizations. So how have they responded to you having this provocation?
Well, I think intellectually they say, yes, that's exactly what we need to do, and you see that so often in the leaders saying, yes, we need to change our business model. Yes, we need to become more like the digital players. We need to become a platform business. So there's a lot of talk and rhetoric, but then the action is difficult to be made. And one of the best examples, actually, and I use this quite a lot to illustrate the art of the possible, is from another sector, which is BP, the oil company. And one of my colleagues ran a peer group with a whole group of big industrial companies from multiple sectors to look at, what was the blockers to moving forward, to being able to do breakthrough innovation. And they looked at what, the structural issues and the human issues and all that sort of thing. And BP was the company that had then executed something against that. And they created this division called Launchpad. I recommend everybody look at it, BP Launchpad. But fundamentally what it was is to say, we are now going to create a proper scale-up factory that has the support of the core business and can leverage the assets of the core business. So rather than creating just one spin-off venture, we can create a factory that's going to create lots of these. And so they created a separate unit. They've put the deputy CEO in charge, which is important because he has the strength and power across both parts, the invent the future and the optimize the present. And they've made a bold statement. They're going to create 5 unicorns in the next 5 years.
Wow.
But, and this is really important, those unicorns are going to drive 5% to the EBITDA margin of the core business as well. So they've created if you like, a future metric and a core metric, which is meaningful to the leaders of the core business, which have all the power. And then what they've also done then is they've created a governance structure to enable the startup businesses or the ventures, the future unicorns, to have access to the core business assets on pre-negotiated terms, access to procurement, marketing, all kinds of access to customers, et cetera, and made sure that the core business can get value back from these new ventures because they are specifically useful to the people who are running the core business as well. So they thought about this really well. One of my colleagues architected it for them, and they've put in place the right structure to enable or to give the best possible chance for this change to work. So that's one of the best examples I've seen in the world at the moment. So I talked a lot to people about it as a result.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you talk about the structure there for this type of change in those organizations. There's a lot of people always talk about healthy tension, but you don't create this level of change without some tension in that process, do you? So there's almost the conflict, the inevitable conflict between the new thing and the old thing in terms of how those things are set up. And actually, I mean, the point that you made again earlier on, the second and third pillar in terms of the operation and the talent. There's a comment here from Rita Martins over on LinkedIn. Sometimes you have almost a 3A, which is a few innovative people in the organization. I don't know if you're speaking in the first person or hypothetically here, Rita. I'll have to have a look at where you work later on. But they may eventually leave that company because of a challenge to number 2. So how can organizations do the innovative people and influence the leadership in a way that they need to? Because many organizations, Simon, I'm sure you've seen this, is it becomes almost a revolution from middle management, which is people are disappointed that every day that they go into work, they almost set themselves aside. We're using digital, we're using the internet, we're using digital communications in our private life, and then we almost put ourselves aside when we get to work and go back to the old model from the 90s.
Exactly.
So how do you sort of influence and start that change, do you think?
Well, I think it comes back to the first point I made about leadership understanding, and because they're the one, unless you have the leadership giving the mandate, the middle layer is always going to be frustrated. And I think what I'm coming to the conclusion is that I think what's needed much more is for leaders to spend more time on looking at the future together. So what does their future markets look like? Because it's not like it was in the past. Most planning is done as an extrapolation of the past. But we know the future's changing so fast at the moment. The present's changing fast enough. And unless we can come together as a leadership group to get some sort of shared vision of what our future markets might look like, then we're lacking the context for then being able to allocate capital and resources and attention to doing something different to take advantage of that. So we're sort of moving ahead blindly. We haven't taken off the blindfolds to look what could our markets really look like. And we may not have perfect insight of it, but at least we've got some shared understanding of that. And I think that then is that's the really important starting point for then which will allow more innovative things to happen within the organization.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because we've, and as you say, the laterals between different industries, what we're seeing in financial services now, BP is a great example. I mean, so many people with things like Kodak sort of miss the point of that story, which was, for anybody who doesn't know, 11FS, Lisa Gansky, one of our non-executive directors, amazing lady, like you should look her up on Wikipedia, but she developed the digital processor for Kodak. And Kodak wasn't stupid. And I don't think any of these banks, Simon, we've had this conversation before, there's nowhere I go where people don't understand it. Same as you. There's nowhere that you go where you're like, I don't get this. Like, it's like, a different language to me. But the investment in digital innovation labs, the investment in, like you say, work where they're not ensuring that they get the ROI from. It's almost like they understand all the technologies, they understand all the things, but it's that last mile in terms of actually, none of this stuff matters until a consumer actually is impacted by it. And where people are spending so much money to not impact their consumers in a positive way, which is just crazy. So, do you think this can be changed? Because obviously it didn't work out so well for Kodak, but actually there's many of other organizations who are able now to start getting trickles of innovation to start getting to the market. RBS, as much as Bo is a bad example, RBS are actually managing to get innovations to the market now. So do you think the big incumbents can the old dogs learn some new tricks, do you think, Simon?
Well, it's in theory, yes, of course, but I think they need to go through these. There are some fundamental foundational things like the organizational setup, and unfortunately, they're not putting in place the level of rigor that I'm seeing with something like BP, for example. It's still a bit of theatre and things on the side. They're not really putting enough money where their mouth is on that. Yeah. And I think, and also, this notion of visions of the future, or the notion of zooming out into what does our world really look like in the future? Because it's a bit scary for people, and they often think, oh God, I don't want to even look at that. It's too much. I don't even understand it. But I think as leaders, things are moving so fast now. Their responsibility is to understand, is to learn and understand how technology is changing everything and what that means if you're a bank or a financial institution. So I think there's and I think the people the shareholders and maybe government, because financial services is so important, I think a bit more pressure on the leaders to take the time to look more broadly at what the world looks like in the future and their role within it is really important. Because why should we be satisfied with flatlining ROE, which also is another way of saying we're not really adding much value to our customers. And I think we need much more innovation in financial services than we have today.
I think the thing I always come back to on, like you say, the difference on when you talk to somebody in leadership that gets it or doesn't get it. When you have a conversation with somebody like Alison Rose at NatWest, she's like, if we don't do this, somebody is going to do this to us. And in the people who I've seen, then actually, the optionality of this stuff will go away if they don't really get on it. And that's definitely what we've seen in other industries. There's a good comment here and question for you actually over on LinkedIn is Tatiana Marsh. Will platforms replace traditional pipelines, that linear value chain in financial services? Can you see us getting to a point, Simon, where this is the way that it's done?
Yeah. So platforms are very, very powerful business models because they take advantage of everything that software and digital is doing in terms of connecting everything, every people, data, information, things, my body, everything is being connected. And platforms are intermediaries that match things together, and that's why they're so effective when everything is connected. So there will be businesses that carry on being pipeline businesses, manufacturing things, but they will always be subordinate or commodities within ecosystems which are coordinated by platforms. So if you want to be a player in what's increasingly a platform and digital economy, you need to have a strategy. Now, the strategy, there's many strategies. You don't have to just create your own sort of Uber for banking or whatever it is like that. There's many different strategies in terms of being a supplier into platforms, being an enabler of platforms. So that's the whole embedded finance notion, that you can embed finance within third-party platforms and digital services. You could create your own ecosystems like Ping An has done, or marketplaces like Starling, or you could create your own fintech businesses. You know, like you could create your own version of Revolut or TransferWise, which then can evolve into a platform business over time, like you're already seeing them doing. So there are many, many different options and approaches for traditional companies. At the moment, then they're not exploring all of those, and they need to create a proper and effective strategy if they want to be successful in a world which is, you know, changing so rapidly.
Fantastic. I honestly think this is the challenge. I honestly think this is the thing that banks need to face into. I mean, Simon, thank you so much for joining us. We're like that half an hour disappeared. I know both of us could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours, but I think the best thing that they can do is go and get a copy of this book. I think if you go and find a copy of Fight, read the book. In, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks time, we'll get Simon back and answer more questions. But then we can have a conversation where we're all on the same level at that point as well. So Simon, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Where can people learn a little bit more about what you're doing and the book?
Yeah, well, so if you go to my website, simon-torrance.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn, that's another easy way as well.
Fantastic. All right, guys, that is all that we have for you today, I'm afraid, and all that we have for you this week. This week has flown by, but I assure you we've got a pretty damn good lineup for next week as well. So on Monday, we're going to be joined by Brad Goodall, who is the CEO and co-founder at Banked, doing some really, really interesting things. Brad's a great guy as well. On Tuesday, this one's going to be really good fun. We've got Ashok Vaswamy, who is the CEO of Consumer Banking and Payments at Barclays. That's going to be really, really interesting. Wednesday, we've got David Fiasso, who is the co-founder of Wealth8. If you don't know Wealth8, they're a millennial money management service for people of African heritage. It's going to be a really interesting show, and actually really interesting to see how that product is doing in the market today. On Thursday, we've got Dr. Sue Black, OBE, who is a tech evangelist, computer scientist, a social entrepreneur, so many things that Sue does. So going to be great to talk to her. And on Friday, we've got Mr. George Kelsey, who is the CTO for EMEA at On Systems, but a really, really good friend of mine as well. So I'm really looking forward to sitting down and having a chat to catch up with George. It's going to be another pretty crazy week, I think. So I hope you guys get some rest over the weekend, get ready for the show on Monday. We will see you, though, same time, same place next week. Have a really great day, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay safe as you can. Goodbye.